Jerilyn Willin. And I hope you had a chance to download or take a look at the handout because we're going to be using that as we go through our 25 minutes. And on the bottom of the first page of the handout is information about me. 25 minutes isn't very long to share with you. And so I put information about myself and my career on that first page so that I wouldn't have to take up our precious time to talk about myself. So why don't we just jump in and get started? If you take a look at the very first page of your handout, and that would be slide 2, Arlene, there are 6 questions. And what I'd like you to do is take a minute to answer the first 3, which you now see on your screen. What change is currently weighing on you? What concerns do you have about it at this point? And then how have you dealt with it as the change has happened? I'm not going to ask you to share this with anybody, so please be really truthful in what change you're dealing with now. You're probably dealing with more than one, but choose one that you can use as we go through our 25 minutes and answer these 3 questions in over the next minute, and then I will continue on. Okay, about another 10 seconds. Now you'll notice that on that page 2, there are 3 more questions, but you will better be able to answer those final 3 questions after we've gone through our 25 minutes together. So that those questions you'll probably be able to answer on your own time. But as we go through our time, keep the change that you are grappling with, keep that top of mind so you can connect what the suggestions that I'm giving you to the concerns that you have and see which ones make sense to you that you might try to as you work through your change. All right, next slide. So we're going to be looking at basically 3 things. We're going to be looking at change versus transition. We're going to look at resistance, and we all know what resistance to change feels like and looks like because we've all done it. And finally, we're going to look at resilience. Resilience being that characteristic that we all have in various levels that help us deal with change, that help us get up. You know, after we've been knocked down 3 times, we get up that 4th time, we get up each time. That is resilience that helps us get up. So we're going to be looking at those things. Next slide. Most of the time when we talk about change, we are talking about the whole picture, the change and what happens to us afterwards. So the first thing I want to cover this afternoon is the difference, because there are 2 pieces to this. It's like 2 twins almost, but they're like 2 fraternal twins. So they are different from each other, but they always show up together. And the first one is change itself. And when we talk about change, we are talking about an event that happens outside of us. And so if you take a look at what you said, your answer to that first question about, what change are you dealing with? It's probably going to be something that has happened already, and it's kind of an event. Examples that I can give you would be if you move to a new neighborhood, or if you are of the age where you have your first child, or maybe your last child, going off to college and you're going to be an empty nester. Or maybe you're having your first child, and so you're going to be making a change from being a person with no kids to a person that has a child. And that's a huge change in a person's life. Um, so a change is an event. Think of it as that, an event. It happens and then it's over. A change that happened in my life was a few years ago. I used to ride horses a lot. And one day I'm sitting on the horse, all relaxed, talking to someone who else is on horseback. And the next thing I know, there's a noise like a shot, though it wasn't a shot, but a shot. And the horse took off and I did not. So one minute I'm sitting on top of the horse, the next minute I am falling on the ground and breaking my wrist. That was the event. That was the change, breaking my wrist. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. What happens after the change is the transition. And we don't talk about transition very often, but that is the psychological process that we have to go through to get over the change, right? To adapt to the new situation. And so for me, for the horseback riding incident, my transition was realizing all the things that you cannot do if you only have one usable hand. And for 9 weeks, that's how I was. And so the transition was, how am I going to get dressed in the morning? How am I going to cut my food? How am I going to bring my materials to my client and open the door at the same time? It was a crazy time. So the change is an event. The transition is getting accustomed to what has happened because of the change. It's a psychological process. Next slide. So when you think about that, you can't help but ask, why is it that people resist change? Well, my goodness. And we all do it. We are all perpetrators of resistance. Why do we resist change? Next slide. Because it's hard. That's why. It's hard work. It requires energy that you typically don't put out for whatever it is you're trying to get used to. You have a loss of competence, a loss of control. Sometimes you can be dealing with a change where your identity is different now. Um, Perhaps the change was a marriage or a divorce or a promotion at work. And so now you're the boss instead of one of the crowd. Um, and I'll leave the last one for the last. So, yeah, you can't help but resist if you have all of these things, loss of competence and control, and a new identity. It's just tough. And so, of course, we're going to resist that, especially if the change is something that we don't want, or or the change is something that we haven't expected. I know that you're in healthcare, and I know that healthcare is looking at some changes coming down the road, and so I'm sure you're feeling some resistance over what's happening and funding, etc. The very last bullet point on this slide, defending the past, really looks at when, usually when something changes, we think to ourselves, well, it's changing because it was wrong before, and now we're changing it to the right thing. But that is not always the case. Sometimes we think everything is absolutely fine just the way it is. And now a change comes along that we don't agree with. And so we spend some additional energy defending what we used to do and saying it was better. So these are all the reasons, and I'm sure there are some more, why people resist change. Next slide. So we've been talking about change. Now let's talk about transition. It's fraternal twin. There are three phases with transition. And transition is what is that psychological process that helps you move toward adapting to the new situation. So the very first one is you have to let go. You have to end. Think in your life, every change that you have gone through, something has ended. If you get married, your singleness ends. If you get divorced, your marriage ends. If your children go away to college, being the person at home that they come home to and tell about their day, etc., that's over. So every time there's a change, there's an ending to something. And because of that, you have to let go of what was before. And there are some things that can help you let go. And these are on page 3. So, because an end is necessary, it's important to acknowledge that something has ended, that something has changed. It's important to express your feelings about that, whether you're really happy about it or maybe you're feeling a little pain, a little sadness about what is no more. But a way to help get through this first piece of transition is to acknowledge, the issues, the losses, and express some sadness. Because if you express that sadness, you are then leaving room for what is new, what is coming, what the future is. Next slide. Once you've done that, you're kind of in the middle. You're kind of in the middle between the end of something and the beginning of something else. And so researchers have called this the wilderness. And in the wilderness, you are, it's important to remember that you have a support system and think about who those people are. Who are the people that you can go to and say, I just can't deal with this. I just can't seem to get this new system, or I can't get over the quiet of the house, or it's so different to be the boss than it is to be one of I hate to say one of the workers because bosses work too, but you know what I mean. And so in the wilderness, it's a time to think about how you're going to move forward. I had a client once who I was telling him, we had gone over these transition phases. And at one session, he came to me and he said, I realize that I'm in the wilderness. I realize I'm dealing with transition. And somebody said to me, well, Phil, when God closes a door, he opens a window. And he goes, and I looked at them and I said, yeah, but Chuck, it's hell in the hallway. And it kind of is when you're in the wilderness, when you're in the middle between two things. Another person told me that she believed it was like being a trapeze artist. And so when you are on that little platform, and you're waiting for the bar to come toward you and it comes toward you and you grab it, and then you have to leap off of that little platform. That's the end. That's the letting go. Because in order to get to the other side, you have to let go of the bar that came to you and grab on to the next bar, the bar that's empty. And between those two things is the wilderness. So the wilderness isn't easy either. but like I said, it's important to figure out who is your support system and to understand that it's okay to be uncertain sometimes. Next slide. Finally, you get to the new beginning. As the trapeze artist, you reach out and you grab that next bar, and oh my goodness, you made it. How can you tell that you have entered a new beginning? Is that you start to think about your new situation more than you thought than you're thinking about the old situation. You start feeling a little more comfortable with the new things. And you should start thinking about how you can make the new things more your own or better. Mm, There are two things that you can do while you're in the new beginning phase that can help. One of them is to acknowledge that baby steps are going to get you there. When you think about people who have big goals, for example, a person who's going to write a book, you might think about writing a book and go, oh, I could never do that. Writing hundreds of pages? But can you write one page? Because writing one page is a baby step. And then the next day, if you write a second page, that's another baby step. And pretty soon you'll realize that, wow, I have 100 baby steps here. I have 100 pages of a novel. So baby steps will get you there. Like the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise was slow, but he still got to where he was going. And then another piece here is to relax. Just relax and say, I am almost there. I can relax and I can think about new things in my new situation and how I'm dealing with and how I can deal with my new situation. Next slide, please. Now, we all know, like I said when I started off, we all know people who nothing seems to get them down. Nothing seems to really bother them for long. And these are people who are resilient. And we all are resilient, but we are at differing levels of resilience. And so, how can we learn to be more resilient? Because resilience is something that we can learn. It's not something that we're born with and we can't do any better or any worse. Next slide. These are some of the characteristics of resilient people. They stay connected, they don't isolate themselves when things are chaotic. They stay connected with other people. They tend to be optimistic. They tend to say, all right, this, I'm feeling kind of chaotic here, but I have to think that I can get through this. When have I been through something like this before and how did I do it? So they're a little more optimistic. They work to stay healthy. They don't deal with their uncertainty by eating more, drinking more, stopping or smoking more, or not exercising. They say, I have to be strong to get through this. And so they exercise more, maybe, or they eat more snacks, but it's apples and oranges and fruit smoothies or something. People who are resilient tend to be spiritual. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they are more religious, but they do have a sense of being a part of something bigger than themselves. And finally, they give back. They, instead of sitting at home on Thanksgiving and their whole family has gone away somewhere else for Thanksgiving and they couldn't go, and so they're feeling pretty bad. They instead of feeling bad at home by themselves, they find a way that they can give back, that they can um, that they can maybe go to a food pantry or to a soup kitchen and serve Thanksgiving dinner to other people. And by doing that, they find that they begin to feel better themselves. And I realized that, I have used mostly negative examples of change, but positive examples of change they have the same sorts of transitional feelings and phases. Um, and usually takes people by surprise because they think if the change is a great one, why am I feeling this way? You know? All right, next one, almost there. So in summary, we have looked at change as an external event and transition as the psychological process that we have to deal with after the change has happened. We've talked about resistance being normal. It's okay to want to dig your heels in a little bit, as long as you don't stay there the whole time. And that resilience is something that can be learned. I realize our time is almost up, so I want to take you to page 5 in your materials, and you will see a survey. And in that survey, you get to um, say how resilient you think you are. And then you add it up at the bottom and you see what your score is. And you're going to have to do that on your own time because I know that your lunchtime is almost over. But another thing to do with this survey is, if before you do it yourself, make a copy of it and give it to a good friend of yours or a spouse maybe, and say, fill this out about me. And then compare how you feel about your resilience with how you're seen by another person as resilient. Last slide, please. Uh-oh. Well, okay. I believe that on the bottom of your very first page, you have my email address and probably my phone number. And so if you have a question, just please feel free to contact me and we can have a chat. Because I don't want you to have your questions unanswered. And I thought I had my information on that last slide. But thank you very much for having me today. And like I say, don't hesitate to contact me. I love talking about change and transition. And I wish you well in your career and in your personal life and everywhere in between. Thank you.
Jerilyn, I think we have a few questions.
Do we have time?
Statements. Yeah, very
Okay.
quickly, if you don't mind.
I don't.
Okay. Our statement. One of the team versus leader of the team has been one of my hardest transitions ever. Also, working with people more senior than myself versus being the most senior person in my current role as student.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like the changes have to do with a changing job. And so what are some of the things that you're struggling with?
So we will wait for that person to share what she's
Okay.
struggling with.
I I think for the first one, when you have been promoted and now, you may be the supervisor of people of your friends. And that's pretty hard because your role is different. You can't be the same kind of friend to them because now you're their boss. And so I think that one of the things that can help, and this would be something that you could do in the very first phase of transition, is to talk with the group, to talk with the folks that you are supervisor of, and explain how it needs to be different now going forward. Because you can't be one of the gang. You're the boss now. And you can't show favoritism, you can't talk about other people on the team or anything like that because, it's a new day, it's a new situation. And and if you go back to that very first page in your handout, it really does talk, it asks questions about, what are some things that you can do to help others with the transition? Because it's not just you that a change has happened for, it's your team also. And so getting together and communicating um, about what they're going through and what you're going through, and that can help a lot moving forward.
I think she echoed what you just said because
Oh,
the person said, I struggle with the differences that I need to implement.
yeah, yeah. And, if you're, think about when you were part of the team, when the boss started to implement new things, you weren't always on board right away. And so just figure that your folks are not going to be on board right away. And so, how can all of you communicate so that people feel more comfortable about what's happening?
Thank you. We have one more question.
Okay.
Can you advise on something came up again. Can you advise on how do you maintain positivity in the face of a change or transition that was not planned?
Oh, yeah. Well, one thing in that first phase of transition is recognizing what has changed and what has not. Sometimes when there's a change that's we consider a negative change for ourselves, and it's like, oh, everything has changed. Really take some time and think about not everything has changed. So what is still there that is that is going to help me be positive? I mean, I still have my talents. I still have all my education or my knowledge. Hopefully, I still have my coworkers who are supportive. I mean, I have no idea what change it is you're going through, but think about not only what has changed, but what is the same. Because sometimes when you realize that there are some things that are the same, it gives you the energy to deal with the things that aren't.
Thank you. How does one handle the wilderness?
Very gently. Um, the wilderness is, I think, the hardest part of a change because you don't know where you belong sometimes. You don't know what skills you have are going to be valuable. If you take a look at page 3 of your handout, I have to put my glasses on to see it. Um, okay, so there might be some things to your advantage in the wilderness. You know how sometimes I don't know if sometimes something is lost, there's a vacuum. And can you fill that vacuum with your skills or your knowledge, your expertise? What has gone away that maybe you can step into that's going to be better for you? Um, and again, figuring out who is your support system. Who are the people that you can vent to, or that are going to empathize with you? Who can you talk to? Because a lot of times things are harder when you can't tell anybody, or you feel like you can't tell anybody. And once you've unburdened yourself, that often can help in the wilderness. And finally, it's okay to be uncertain. Uncertainty is a part of life. And so give yourself a break. Think about some of the things you might be telling yourself about what happened, and ask yourself, would I say those same words to a good friend of mine? Or am I being too hard on myself? Because we can be our own worst enemies sometimes.
Well, I think that's all. And our staff, as you can mention, are so interested in this topic with those questions. And so we thank you, Jerilyn, for your time today. You have been very generous with your subject matter expertise as well as your time. And
And
again, everyone, please complete the evaluation. The link is on the chat. And I will provide you the feedback as well, Jerilyn, and we wish you the best.
great. Thank you so much. And I wish the absolute best for all of you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, the hearts. How cute.
Yes. Some of our people are like that. Yeah. So everyone, thank you so much for coming. We hope to see you on Thursday. Walk with the Doc, Thrive Thursday at Nicole Park in Richmond. The walkers are Dr. Bill Walker, who was our guest yesterday, the Legislative and Governmental Affairs Director, as well as Dr. Irene Lowe, CCHP CEO. So if you want to talk to them, walk with the doc on Thursday, the 17th at Nicole Park in Richmond. And next week, we're going to have another exciting session featuring a new speaker. Monday, how to live a life you're supposed to live. And also on Tuesday, the 22nd, maximize your day, the tools and neuroscience of high performance business and flow. Oh, sorry. Okay, so now my face is whole. Sorry about that. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. See you on Thursday or see you on Tuesday or Monday for the Zoom session. Bye. Take care. Thank you. Hoping, by the way, that you have completed the evaluation. This is very much needed.